Hi, and welcome to another episode of Kuntarkis. My name is Michael Yon, and today we're talking about shapeshifting. So firstly, Kuntarkis, what is shapeshifting?
Well, on planet Earth, I really don't think a lot of people fully understand that terminology. That terminology was created from the movies, basically. And if you look through some of the movies, there's been people changing into different forms. But nobody's ever explained how they do it. Nobody's ever explained, is it possible for, say, any human or any being throughout all universes, are they capable of shape shifting? Now, the interesting factor is the answer would be yes, absolutely. But the biggest issue is the way we are in our thought consciousness as a species. I'll refer to myself as human for a start, so it makes it more easier for the people who are listening to it. I've worked on what I call breaking down the atomic structure of your cellular cells. I learnt back in 1988, going through a big healing, how to communicate with one's cellular cells. And I discovered that if you communicate from your heart, and your heart is open to that type of understanding, to that type of self-awareness, it's amazing what you can do. Now, this is where it really gets interesting. This is going back to the basic human. Let's say a man and a woman are intimate and they have an exchange of fluids. The woman becomes pregnant. Over months, this little thing inside is developing. The mother's blood, DNA, is flowing through the future child. What is happening to that child? The cells are forming. The atomic structure to create a life form is literally transforming into all these different shapes as it grows and matures within the mother's womb. That, in truth, is a form of shape shifting. Basic, but still a form. The reason I explained it that way is so people can look at it and say, oh yeah, that's a child forming, or that's a baby forming inside a mother's womb. Now, you've got to ask yourself this question. How many times has a person looked into a mirror and they say, oh my God, I look so different. I look old. I look tired. Or they might say, wow, I look really good. I look younger. I look better than I ever have. Now, you've got to ask yourself this other question. What's causing that? What is causing that transformation that your human eyes can see? It's your atomic structure. It's reacting to your emotions in how you're feeling. And it's giving you what you want. If you think in your mind or your human brain that I feel terrible, I feel sick, I feel old, God, I've got grey hair, I'm losing my hair, I'm putting on a big belly, my legs are getting fatter, I look like beer bottles, I've got no muscle structure, I just look terrible. If you keep telling yourself that, your cellular cells, which is your atomic structure, will give you exactly what you are asking. Now, on the other hand, if you say, in the morning, I'm looking better, I'm feeling better, my body is looking better, it's getting thinner and thinner, my muscle structure is starting to define itself, I feel stronger, I feel even more intelligent, more aware. When you talk like that in a positive way, again, your atomic structure is giving you exactly what you are asking or what you are seeing. So in a way, you are shape shifting. without even knowing you're doing it. Now let's get back to another part. How many cells do we actually have in our human body that makes up our entire essence? I'll ask you, Michael, give me an answer on that one.
Over 4 quadrillion.
That's right, exactly. And remember, scientists only think there's about 37 trillion cellular cells that makes up your entire being. But in reality, that's not true, because there are cells within cells, like space within space. So naturally, if you multiply that so many times over, you'll come to an answer probably around about 4 quadrillion or just over. Now, the interesting thing about your cellular structure, it's living consciousness. It has the ability to create form. Now, it creates form the way you are, the way you expect to grow, because of your DNA. Now, let's say you go beyond your limitations of understanding your DNA, your genetics. Let's say you become a free thinker, where you're free from all that conditioning that's been passed on to you in every lifetime that you've ever existed. If you can do that by becoming self-aware in one lifetime, you can become more self-aware in every lifetime you have. If you think that it's possible to just change your shape into whatever you want or whatever you wish, you have the ability to do that. But the issue is your conditioning. And that's where the real big problem exists. We have to change our conditioning. We have to learn to let go of the old so it doesn't tie us to the past. And that's not an easy thing to achieve.
Another way of saying that is evolving, right?
Exactly. If we want to evolve, we have to go beyond what we believe in. Right? It's like, okay, this is a really crazy example, but let's take who our current Prime Minister is. Let's take who the current Prime Minister is in Canberra. In Canada. He believes that the new laws that are coming out, that they're creating, will wipe out all religions and all freedom. What happens to a society when you take away all their beliefs and their freedom? They become like zombies, where they say, yes, sir, no, sir, I'll do that, sir, no, I won't do that, sir. That's what actually happens. And that's whatever's happening around our world today is what they want to achieve. Now, why do they want to achieve that? The hardest answer for anyone to accept is a word that is called Satanism, because instantly we think of the devil. Well, the devil doesn't exist, never has, never will. The devil is within each of us, and that's to do with what we have done through our thoughts, through our actions, throughout every lifetime. That's what we got to conquer. If we can conquer our past and forgive our past and feel from the heart the essence of who we are, we can learn to step into a new type of existence and become thought-conscious beings, fully self-aware, no longer tied to the old. And what's happening around our world at the moment is the old, 100%. The Prime Minister, that's Scott Morrison, he's the old. It's the old way of thinking. Even what he wants to do is dominate every person in Australia. Control, 100%. And if we allow that, because we're so blasé about life and we don't stand up for ourselves, we will never become conscious. We will never understand that there are things that are within us that is so powerful that we have the imagination and the mind and the will to literally shape shift whenever we choose to. But it doesn't stop there. It's not about just changing your form structure. It's more so that you can travel through your imagination, your mind, into any part of planet Earth and any part of the universe. I know beings that do that. And yes, like my father, a little under 19 billion years in his own evolution, he has the ability to travel through his thought consciousness wherever he chooses. He can change form by shape shifting whenever he chooses and whatever he chooses to be. There's another one called Taikani. Nowhere near the same abilities as my father, Kuntarkis, but he can shape shift at will. He can't create the magic at this time, but he can create some. But he's learning in his own evolution. There's a being I met a few nights ago, and he had an unusual name, and it literally has slipped my mind at the moment. But he's a very, very unusual looking, how would you say, a being. He's not over tall. He's about 6 foot tall, but he has the most strangest head and the most strangest ears. It's like not horns, like blowers on his head. They're like one of those old radiograms where they've got that big opening where the music comes out, and his ears are shaped like that on the side of his head. But his head is shaped a little bit like a big egg. Not as much, but close. And he doesn't have much of a neck at all. And his body is very unusual, but I couldn't see what he actually looked like physically because he was wearing this unusual robe. And he came to me when I was sitting in darkness thinking about things, about what to do, about what's happening on this earth. And he said to me, he said, "Hello, Kuntarkis." I didn't look up. And I just said, "Hello." And he introduced himself. And it was a strange name, so I just have to try and remember it. I asked, "Why are you here?" And he said, "I thought I would just drop in and I would communicate with you." He said, "It's been on your mind about this shape-shifting." I said, "Yes." He said, "I do it all the time." He said, "Anyone can do it if you're consciously aware and you're willing to discipline yourself, change your diet, change your thinking. Get rid of the habits in your life that stop you from moving forward, that stops you from wanting to change. Because you see, change is simply your conditioning. And when you live in your conditioning, you cannot have the ability to change because you're living in your conditioning, which is old. And that's what holds back every species in every universe. I said, "How old are you?" He said, "I don't know." I said, "That's an interesting answer." He said, "Truly, I have no awareness of how old I am. I have no awareness of how big I am. I have no awareness of how I speak, but I know I can." I says, "Can you create things?" He said, "Yes." I said, "Do you know how?" He said, "No, but I think on it and it becomes true." So he's a creator just like my father. And that's really interesting. So we had a very long discussion, and a lot of it was based on shape shifting and how we can adapt that ability even as humans. But what we have to do is learn to let go and be willing to change. And once we can let go and we are willing to change, that's where our real journey of evolution begins. At the moment, all of humanity, every single person on this planet is living their past. No matter how much we think that we're advancing or we're evolving, we are, but what we're evolving from is with our past, because we don't know how to truly dissolve it, because we're not attached to our heart, and we don't understand the true meaning of what the heart is. And I think I remember we did an episode on the heart. Did we do that episode on the heart, finding your heart?
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure we did, or knowing your heart. It might have been
knowing your heart. Yeah.
Knowing your heart. Well, that is the essence of the beginning, Michael, of any evolution as a species, whether it's singular or plural.
I remember coming to you one day and I said, Kuntarkis, I've got this really cool book. It's written from Melbourne and it's called Awakening the Third Eye. And you kind of scoffed at me. You said, it's in your heart, Michael. Just learn your heart.
Yes, that's very true.
It's so funny because all this technical detail in this book, and I was all excited about it. Yes. And yet you're not wrong. You're right. Like if you just focus on one thing, that like the most important, which is your heart, and come from there, everything comes from there, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Let me give a little secret. Now, maybe it's not a secret, but I think it is in a way, because we're not focusing on our hearts. We're focusing on our problems at the moment because of what's happening. And the government in Australia, let's just use Australia as an example, they have created so much fear in people. They have turned families against families because some are vaxxed, some are not. I believe everyone has free will because freedom is everybody's right, not just on this planet, on every planet. And when you start to grow consciously, that's when you know you have the power to understand you can do whatever you want to do, and it will be so. And that's why shape-shifting is a big possibility for everyone. You can break down your atomic structure and create it the way you want. Even if you want your body to look better, you can do it through being positive. When you have a positive thought or a positive action, the reaction must be positive. If you have a negative action, the outcome will be a negative action. So you've got to think positive. If you don't believe in something just because you're ignorant, just because you're not willing to look or open your eyes, well, that's your own stupidity. But don't put that stupidity onto your family, onto your children. Give them the opportunity to see the truth. What say you, Michael?
Yeah, I hear you, and that's a good basis to start off for for shapeshifting. Can we now move into the more interesting? Sorry,
intricate side.
I accidentally said interesting because I was thinking shapeshifting where it happens I don't know how quickly it happens, but in history we know werewolves was one of the examples of shapeshifting, where a person on a full moon would turn into a wolf.
That was actually alien interference genetically.
Oh, really?
Yes, that's all alien interference. The aliens of a negative nature have been playing with genetics for so long on planet Earth, it's not funny. It's been going on for a very long time, Michael, and they've created, you look at all the hieroglyphics on all the pyramids and all that, you see a lot of people standing there with human bodies, but they got a dog head, or they got a bird head, or they got a tiger head or a lion head. Well, they were doing all that back then. They were putting heads on, just experiments. But they weren't the locals. They weren't the actual people doing it. It was aliens, because they've been playing with genetic engineering for a very long time.
Yeah, they come here and practice it.
Absolutely, because we're so gullible. We just
easily
manipulated, and that's the biggest problem. Now, as I said before, if a person wants to learn about themselves, they've got to learn to touch the divinity of who they are. You just can't go out and say, I'm going to go and learn how to shapeshift, and I'm going to become this hideous monster, and I'm going to go out and kill all my enemies. And nobody will actually know who did it. I've heard people say that. Oh, I'd love to do that. But that's not the way it works. In the old samurai and the ninja stages, going back probably, I think you find well before Christ, and probably in about 500 AD to about 1300 AD, in that vicinity, roughly.
Or BC, you mean, before Christ?
Yeah, before Christ, but also after Christ.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, after Christ. There was a lot of things going on, and the ninjas, they learned a very interesting art. They learned how to take on the form of animals, like through kung fu. They would practice, like, say, praying mantis, snake, eagle claw, tiger claw, elephant, monkey. So many different types. There's probably over 100 of them in reality. And that's because they used to watch how these creatures fought. Even the praying mantis, how they'd throw their front legs up. And if you look at how they throw their front legs up, well, man, when he fights, he throws his front legs up, brings up one of his legs, and he can do this massive hard kick in the chest of a person, then come down with these two claws and scratch their entire face and body like a bird. They learnt all this, and then they started to go into magic, and some of them dwelt into the deeper side of dark magic, because that does exist also. That's just the evil side of people. But a lot of the assassins, like the ninja assassins, they learned how to shapeshift, and they could become the person that they might be about to kill, to put them in the right frame or to fool someone, and then they'd come and kill them. It was amazing what they used to do. But they did shape-shifting back then. They knew how to do it. But that art was lost because of the wars, because of the loss of information, the loss of records. So it was just lost through history. And only a very, very few sort of learned to understand it. But there is one thing that's very interesting. There are some aliens on this planet from other worlds that have the ability to shape shift perfectly, and they can pretend to be someone, no matter who that person may be, even the President of the United States, or the President in Germany, or the Queen, the King, whatever, whoever they wanted to be, or whatever the influence was. They could literally shape shift, and they knew how to break their atomic structure down. One of the secrets about that, naturally, is discipline. Now, discipline means, how would you say, to commit yourself to a time factor, where you train at something every single day, whether it's at a specific time or just to practice every single day whenever you felt the need. And that's how they achieved all their abilities. Now, when I was down in 1988, right inside my own divinity, which is my soul, and I was sitting in that energy that had no form, that energy was constantly moving as it was speaking to me. And as it spoke to me, I could see it and I could touch it. And as I touched it, it all sparkled all these little lines would run over my hands, and I'd watch it. And something popped into my head. If this energy is formless, if this energy has no shape, yet can communicate, well, how is it communicating? It's not communicating verbally. I can hear it, and it sounds like it's verbally, but it's not. It's telepathically, because it's speaking into me. I can feel the vibration within inside my body. So that means that I'm a part of that energy for it to do that, a part of that divinity. It's my soul. So I would sort of think to myself, well, if this energy can break down and be what it is, it must also be able to take on any form. Then I thought, when I had a very interesting experience about 18 months ago, and I was communicating with this being, very distinguished gentleman, very profound in the way he stood and the way he communicated, but he had strength, but he had heart. And I realized it was part of my soul. And the soul wanted to communicate with me in a different way to give me a different understanding of particular knowledge. And when I took that recognition, this being looked at me right into my eyes and smiled so deeply and turned into energy and just went straight off. That was part of my soul. It created that situation so he could communicate with me on a different level. So I didn't think that my soul was so high it didn't want to communicate with me. And that's what we think. You know that? That's why we believe in a God. We believe in this external thing that represents this God figure. But we don't believe in ourselves. We don't think that we're good enough to do extraordinary things. And yet I know we can. And that's why I'm personally working on that, changing my form. And the reason I know, Michael, shape-shifting works, I've been on other multi-dimensional worlds many times now. And I've seen myself take on form. I've seen myself as me, Kuntarkis or Roman, and suddenly, as I'm looking at myself, I'm sort of shooting back, I change form into someone different, taller, bigger, different face, different hair, yet I know it's me.
So how long would that period take for you to shift?
Oh, moments.
Yeah, and what does it feel like when you're shape-shifting?
It feels like you're being stretched by a rubber band. You know, like putty?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like there's no sound. Oh. It just happens. It's all energy. It's like spontaneously. It's quite incredible.
I just thought of like a cloud that changes shape.
That's right.
Right.
Now, the reason I know shape-shifting works, but what we got to do is connect the dots. We got to say, okay, how does it work? Is it just what our books tell us, or the fantasy side of it, that we can just think it and it's going to happen? Or is it much deeper than that? The first thing is communication with your heart. The second thing is direct communication with your soul. And after that, you've got to try and formulate it in your imagination to what you want to change. And what I did when I healed my lung, I rejuvenated my entire lung. I saw my left lung deteriorated, rotting. I saw it dissolve, literally like an energy dissolving away. And as I looked inside my own chest, I could see no lung whatsoever, just the stem from where it was connected. And when I worked on it, I could see it growing through my imagination, because I made my imagination reality. because I believe that imagination is the secret to all things. It connects us to our divinity, to our soul, to our mind. It's very powerful if we allow the natural process. And yes, it takes time. And the problem with us as a human species, we all want the magic pill. We don't want to put the energy or the time into it because we feel it's mundane, because our world today is running so high on technology that we think, well, why can't we do this like we can build technology? But we can't. We can't because we're actually retarded in a way, in our own consciousness. Yes, we're capable of thinking with our human brains. We're capable of accepting new knowledge. We're capable when we're a child, we grow, we accept it quicker. But what we can't accept, because we're not taught to accept, if it became a part of our life, say shape-shifting or being magical, we would then have the ability to have the patience and the discipline to proceed and not stop until we accomplished it. Isn't that true?
Yeah, and speaking of the discipline and just not stopping until you have achieved it, maybe now's a good time for you to mention shape-shifting as it relates to the Doricans.
Ah, yes, the Doricans, yeah. Yeah, the Doricans on Doricaea. Okay. Most people probably don't know what the Doricans are because they haven't read my... Well, some have, but most people that probably listen to this don't even know what a Dorican is. A Dorican comes from a society and they're dragons. And they're just over 8 million years old in evolution, which is a lot older than what we are, 7 and a bit million years more in evolution than what we are. And we think we're so highly advanced, and yet you can imagine what their advancement is when it comes to technology. Their technology is fairly advanced in their spaceships, but it's more so advanced in their spiritual self. And the ones that opened them up to that side of life, side of existence, was the Nicarons. And the Nicarons are 27 million years old in evolution. And their technology is just mind-boggling. It really is. But anyway, back to the Doricans. When the Doricans first began their evolution, they would be more so known as a flying lizard, or a lizard that walked on the ground and became a flying lizard. And that went on for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of years. And what came out of it was a dragon that couldn't speak, that could blow fire, that was very vicious, massive carnivore. You think like, say, a T-Rex can put down 500 pounds of meat in one day. A dragon is about 45 foot long, and its capacity would be probably equal that amount of, say, dead animal inside its stomach when it was a full-on vicious carnivore. And over history, they were approached, as they started to evolve first, they were very confused. And what it was Yakis Kardis, my father, he observes planets in their evolution. He observed the Nicarons for thousands and thousands of years before he literally entered into their vibration and communicated with them.
He shapeshifted.
Yes, shapeshifted. That's exactly right.
He looked like one of them.
He looked like one of them.
Even though he's normally 12 foot tall.
That's right, yeah. Now, the interesting thing about the dragons, as Yakis Kardis watched him, he could see that there was a big possibility if guided by the right people. So he approached the Nicarons, and the Nicarons agreed straight away. So there was a convoy, and they went to them. When they first went to them, there were a few battles, but the dragons soon learnt that they could not harm the Nicarons. They were too big, like in their own style. I mean, I know the dragons were bigger, but they were big, solid, absolutely unbelievable fighters, and they could chop up a dragon so quick it wouldn't be funny. And the speed of an Acharon would outweigh the dragons probably 10 times, because dragons, even though they look fast, well, it's sort of slow in a way when you really see it in slow motion against an Acharon. Over a period of time, certain dragons wanted to communicate with the Necharons. And what the Necharons did, one day, I remember from my own memory banks that my father put into me, there was an Acharon who believed that they could transform in consciousness. And he put that to them. Some really listened, others didn't. But over time, they started to listen and listen. Thousands of years went by. Now, knowing an Acharon, they live up to 450 years, 460 years, so it's not an issue. One dies, they're reborn again. So it's not a problem, because they remember every lifetime. Necharons are very, very fortunate. They remember all their lifetimes. And that's how they can deal with any karma that they did have. But now, in their evolution, they don't believe in karma. We believe in it because we've been so violent and we've never really resolved all the past history of humanity. And that's where the issue is. But anyway, with the Necharons, eventually there was one that actually stood forward, and he said, and his name was Tang Yung. And the funny thing is, I'm going to write a book about him. And Tang Yung was so fascinated on the prospect of being able to transform from a dragon into something that looked like a man or a woman. And eventually the first being, or the first dragon, to ever consciously shapeshift was Tang Yung. And when he did that, come out of the sky to prove to his people, because they had no idea that he was going to do it on that day, none whatsoever. He was secretly with some of the Necharons teaching him what they call a meditation. Let's just use the word meditation. How to go within yourself, how to learn to connect to your divinity, how to learn to shift your own essence into whatever form you choose. And they choose at that moment something that looks like a man but more humanoid. Only about 6'4" tall, but anyway, he came out of the sky and he was flying around, and all the dragons looked up. They wondered what was going on. There were Necharons there, and there was this big stone that stood about 12 foot tall. It was large, very large, and on the top it was a flat surface, and that's where dragons would sit when they communicated. Now, they did learn how to communicate verbally in Sanskrit. The Necharons taught the dragons how to actually speak, how to change their vocal box. And apparently it's quite easy. I mean, you've heard so many people imitate other people. Mm-hmm. So you can change the tone and you can grow in your structure and communicate verbally, more so than what a dragon would normally do, just roar. I mean, there's apparently dogs on the planet that can literally say a couple of human words where dogs have been taught. Yeah. So anyway, Tang Yung come down, and suddenly in that moment, history for the Doricans on the planet Doricaea changed forever. He came down and he transformed and landed on the rock as a humanoid. And the only difference was, from being a dragon, being humanoid, he still had those very deep, engraved dragon markings on his, like, scales.
Were they literally scales?
Yeah,
or they look like scales?
they were literally scales to begin with. But it didn't take very long. It only took a few thousand years for that to actually dissipate. I mean, you heard there's animals that used to be able to fly all the time over oceans. They land on an island and they don't go flying, and then suddenly they can't fly anymore.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So it's the same principle. It's evolution. Now, that is shape shifting, is it not?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course it is. But we misunderstand the meaning of shape shifting. We think that, shape shifting is just turning into a beast or turning into another person. But it's not about that in total. Shape shifting can be so many things. It can literally help heal you. I mean, God, if I can grow a lung, that is just mind-blowing. A man in India back in the 1940s, he grew an arm. He lost one of his arms and he grew an arm. And that's recorded in history. So everything is possible if we're willing to become self-aware.
So I just want to ask Kuntarkis, it might be really simple for you to answer, but for me it just seems interesting that, a 45-foot long dragon can shapeshift into something that is so much smaller. Where does all that extra...
Okay.
Yeah,
okay. you know my son, right? My son, yep. JC, right? Well, let me give you a brief description of him first. Back in 1937, I think when he perished in the outbacks of Australia, and he was chasing after his brother. He was just on 3 years of age, just under 3 years of age. And his brother, he had two brothers, but they didn't want anything to do with him because they were older. And they ran off with their friends. Well, being in the outback, there was just one train track. And unfortunately, the drivers don't really see what's in front of them. And he was running after his brother, and he tripped over the track, and his head hit the rocks, and it gave him a massive gouge in his head. And he bled to death and died because he got knocked out. And he bled to death and he died. And sometime through the night, a train went through and it ran over both his legs. And he died. He went into spirit world. And what he could do was just crawl around. And he used to hide in boxes, hide in the corners, hide in the dark because he was scared. And that was really sad. And I have a friend called Little Jaka, who's a little elemental in the fourth dimension. And he asked me if I would actually come with him and help someone because Jaka got to know him. And I said, of course I would. So Jaka helped me one night come out of my body and took me to him. And we went into the spirit world. And eventually we saw him, but he kept, dragging himself away from me. He wouldn't come out and he was scared and everything like that because he was reliving his painful experience over and over and over again. And that's what happens in spirit world to many people because they have no awareness that they're dead. Anyway, eventually I got to communicate with him, and over a period of time, when I used to go out every night, I would meet with him, I would talk to him, and eventually I got him to grow his legs. When I say grow his legs, I mean the mind is very powerful because you still have your mind when you're in spirit world. You don't have your human brain, so you've got to have something. And he literally, over a period of time, manifested his own legs and cleaned him up. And I got very friendly with him, and he used to say to me, "You're my daddy." And I said, "I love you, little mate." And he says, "Am I your son?" And I said, "Yes, you're my son." And I had a recognition there and then that one day he would be born, and he would be born to me as his father. And also Michelle as his mother. It's quite amazing, really. Anyway, I taught him magic in the spirit world. I told him everything is possible, and it is. You can do anything in spirit world if you have self-awareness. And I'm talking about shape-shifting, which is a really interesting factor because I do it not every night, but many nights. When I go out, I can shape-shift into anything. And that's a really brilliant way of learning how to shapeshift.
Oh yeah, but learning in the spirit world.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Now what happens in the spirit world? It's your consciousness that creates the outcome. That's why you must develop your thought consciousness in the physical world first. If you don't, then you just go into the astral world or the spirit world and just be who you are, just like you were when you were living in a physical body, fearful or whatever. Now, the thing is, I taught him magic. And over the years, Michael, he became so damn good at it. And I used to tell him about the Hulk. You know, the first movie, The Hulk?
Yeah.
Well, I used to teach him how to create the Hulk. And so when he used to come up against really naughty boys, he had this little green hat and he would turn it around and he said, what if I told you I could become 50 times bigger than you, all of you put together? They would laugh at him and they would throw things at him or somebody else. And suddenly he'd get a little bit annoyed and he would suddenly turn green and become this huge 15-foot creature in the spirit world. And he learned that. And he used to be the protector of all these different people in the spirit world. And that's where he learned magic. So he learned shape-shifting. And I'm trusting as he gets older, he's be 6 in August, that he'll start to remember if I sort of coax him a little and just see what happens. Right? So you can turn around and develop it in spirit world as much as you can develop it in the physical.
And I mean, I was going to ask, what does it look like when it's happening? But it changes shape. So it goes from one shape to the other shape.
It does. It's like being expanded like a rubber band. That's what it's like. You're sort of moving. It just happens. And also you're talking about the amount of cellular structure.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. What's really interesting is, you know how you have a baby, right, is born, and it might have, say, well, let's be generous. It might have, say, 2 quadrillion cells. What it's born with, physically. And as it starts to grow, the cells grow. So where are the cells coming from? How are they growing? If everything is energy, it must be growing from living energy through the physical body. Because every time you take a breath, what are you breathing in?
Living energy, yeah.
You're breathing energy. Most people's answer would be, I'm breathing in air, so I survive. Haven't you ever sort of sat on a veranda or sat on a beach looking out, and suddenly you see all these little specks, like little worms, crawling, different sizes, different shapes, all over the place? Have you ever seen that, Michael?
I think I'm literally seeing something like that now.
Okay.
I just started doing it when you said it.
Yeah.
Just took me back to doing it again.
Yes,
yeah.
That is living energy. And it's moving all the time. It's microscopic. It's in the air. And every time you take a breath and breathe that in and recognize what you're doing, you can increase your knowledge 5, 10, 15%. Because that living energy is full of knowledge. Because it's been around for a very, very long time. So when you start to grow, you're taking on more living energy, which creates physical cells automatically.
Now you are from Kuntarkis.
Yeah.
And when you've gone back there several times, you've shape-shifted from your human self to your Nakaran self. Do you notice yourself, like, as you're shape-shifting, maybe you're taking deep breaths, and does it take like 3 seconds or 30 seconds or?
Probably less than 3 seconds.
Yeah, less than 3. And do you take in some extra energy as breathing just to?
I don't take it on as something that I would notice. It's just automatic. I don't even know if I could describe it as a unique experience. All I know is I say, I am Kuntarkis now. That's what I say. Sometimes I say, I'm on my home world. I am Kuntarkis now. And as soon as I see my brother, he looks at me and says, brother, you're back. You look good. That's what he says to me. Right?
Yeah, and before people are thinking, oh, can we see Kuntarkis do it here on Earth? There's just tricky energies here that make it a lot harder to do something like that.
I tell you something now. If you went to the planet Nakaris, anyone, and if they saw the way the people are and the way they live, the way they communicate, the way they have fun from the heart, the way they think, the way they talk, the way they help each other, they would say, my God, I want that lifestyle. Straight away. There's no money. There's no finance. There's no bickering. There's no rape. There's no violence. There's no murder. There's no stealing.
Illness.
There's no sickness. No illness. Now, one of the most powerful things you can say to yourself is, I live in perfect health. I have a perfect, unique body. I am stronger in every moment of every breath. If you say things like that, the reality must come into existence. But because we live in this third dimensional world, and it's not the third dimensional world that's causing the problem, it's 928 years of human history is the issue.
Kuntarkis, sorry, it's a new year. We're going to have to say 929 years now.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah. But don't forget, that's a bit different there. We are 928,000. You have to wait.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah. I just realized what I did wrong. No, because I was thinking of the other one, the 452 years ago, the New World Order.
No.
Yeah. Yeah.
Win 1,000.
Actually, can we just skip 1,000 years? Is that possible?
Yeah. I don't think so. No, I don't think so.
Just fall asleep and evolve and come back when it's something.
I wonder how many people could actually believe that human history is 928,000 years old. And how many people could believe that 87,000 Akarons were placed here because they were the ones that didn't want to change consciously. And they've mingled with the locals, which is Neanderthals. And what we have today is a human species. I wonder how many people could literally accept that. I mean, seriously. It'd be a very hard thing or a hard concept for people to actually believe that. And yet they're finding different evidence all around the world at different times, and they try to hide it. That they found, things like a body or bodies that are well over 500,000 years old that have been preserved. And yet originally the history was supposed to be only 5,000, 10,000, 15,000, up to 50,000 years old. Now it's hundreds of thousands of years old. Yeah? So, yeah,
good question.
Yeah, it's interesting, very interesting thing. But anyway, yeah. So if when I go back home, I just got to say, Kuntarkis, I am Kuntarkis. And I change, literally. And when you see the change, it's like the energy just expands and becomes a part of what I am. It's like there's no limitations to living energy, where we as physical beings, because we're so highly conditioned, we have expectations. Isn't that true?
Yeah.
Yeah. But what we need to do is go beyond that and have no expectations of anything and just be in the moment. And if we want to learn how to shapeshift, it's a matter, this is the simplest part, it's a matter of becoming still in your mind and allow the chatter of your human brain to stop. And once you go beyond that, heal yourself first. And if you learn to heal yourself, forgive yourself, let go of all the negative things that you have accomplished or you have created, learn to forgive others, and just move on with life and existence. That's where you begin to understand that everything is possible, that we as humans are so much more. But we have to learn to understand that, and we have to learn to believe it. But first, what we have to do is find our hearts. Our hearts need to be found, need to grow and expand. And if we learn worldwide to grow our hearts and expanding our hearts, the power of any government can never, ever affect us. It can't.
Yeah, the governments are on the weaker side, or on
Absolutely.
the losing side, because they're lacking heart.
Yeah, I mean they're all Satanism. That's what they are.
Satanists.
Satanists, yes, Satanists. That's what they are. That's what they practice. That's really sad. Do you have any questions on that?
I don't think I have any more questions. That was really interesting. Let me think. If there's one more question as relates to shape-shifting, what's the largest or most interesting or different thing that you've known someone or yourself in spirit world to shape-shift into? What's something really unique?
I just got to think for a moment there, mate. Got to think. That's not an easy one to answer, to be honest.
Or have you ever been a dinosaur?
Have I? No.
Have you ever shapeshifted into being a dinosaur?
No, I haven't. Or? But I know one that has, and that's what's his name? Taikani. Taikani was practicing because I was giving him some photos through my mind. Yeah, I actually, when I went and saw him, I was talking to him quite a little while ago now, and we've become good friends. And I actually gave him some photos, and what he did, he put his head on my head and just touched the top part of our heads, right? Just butted them together, and he could then visualize my thought consciousness in my photo image, and he would take that, and I would say, can you do this? And he was showing me what he had learnt, and he literally became one of the most fearful of little creatures, and that's a raptor.
Oh, yes.
And he literally transformed himself into a raptor, but he could still speak. And when he spoke, it was so funny. It really was funny because his voice was hard to understand, but it was echoing because of the sounds they make. Their vocal cords aren't like humans. They can talk, but they can't talk to human structure. So the vocals are different. And if the vocals are different, you can't get the same reverberation. Yeah. Right? But he turned into a raptor. And then I said, okay, can you turn into this one? And he turned into the, I can never pronounce their names. The one with the long neck, and they're about 100 foot long.
Yeah, I can't remember right now. Brachiosaurus.
Yeah, Brock or something or other. Yeah. And he turned into one of those. And the funny thing is, I said to him, it's amazing, I said, Taikani, that you can go from a raptor, which is, it's understandable that your energies would be able to formulate that. But when you went into this creature, they're 100 foot long. Their body is so big, it's not funny. And the amount of quadrillion cells that would formulate that would probably have to be 60, 70 times the human. Yeah. And he said, it's a matter of knowing you can. That's all I do. He said, your father taught me well. He never taught me to have doubt, to put doubt into my mind. And I think that's one of the issues with us as humans. We often put doubt, self-doubt, into anything we want to achieve or want to do. We even talk ourselves out of it, and that's not good. So, I think if I was looking at it that way, I would have to say Taikani.
That's interesting. I'm so glad I asked. Well, thank you, Kuntarkis, for all that you shared. Now, before we conclude this episode on shapeshifting, we wanted to include some audio that we had captured earlier that we hadn't published and we wanted to publish. So here is Kuntarkis with a bit more to do with knowing your heart.
This brings me to my point about knowing your heart now. Now, the interesting thing is, it's going to be a pretty broad statement, and there's going to be people that will abuse it, or me, will say it's a load of rubbish. But I'm sorry, they're wrong. What I'm going to say now is 100% truth from my essence, because I've been around for 3.83 million years, and I've got my Father's knowledge within my essence of my cellular cells, and it comes out more and more as I open up my heart. And that's what I do. I speak from my heart, not my ego. Because ego will never, ever give you the truth. It's the illusion of life. And what we live today on this planet is the illusion of life because of the greed of certain sectors of society. And that's the sad part. And those certain sectors of society will never, ever know their heart. I want to say this to humanity. And the reason I can say it with strength, honesty, is because I do have an understanding of the energies of the heart. I have an understanding of what living energy truly is. And I work with living energy that is within all things, that is created into solid substance on this earth and every planet in every trillion universes. Now, the interesting factor about living energy, if you learn to understand that every single human being has over 4 quadrillion cells of living energy that makes up their entire existence. And that energy is within you, around you, in every moment of every breath. That energy has its own form of consciousness, and it can't wait to work with you. It wants to work with you. It wants to enhance itself in you. It's not from the illusionary myth of a god or gods. It literally exists from the dawn of time. Right from the moment when one cell had a thought. And that's where it all began. And if we learn to live in the moment and not race around as if our little butts are on fire, we start to see reality. And the best way to see reality is through the heart. Just imagine, if you look to your right, your mind is all around you, right? And if you look further to the right up, your soul. And your soul again is all around you. So you are living in a vortex, a personal vortex of your own.
Wow. Thank you, Kuntarkis. That's very good to know. Well, this concludes the episode on shapeshifting. If you would like to connect with us, we'd love to hear from you. If you want to share your thoughts or have a request or anything, please contact us on kuntarkis@gmail.com or our Facebook page, Kuntarkis. And you can find out more about Kuntarkis and his books on his website, which is etcconsciousness.com. Well, that's it for now. Thanks so much for listening. My name is Michael Yon, and stay tuned for more.